AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is warning that a U.S. takeover of Greenland would mean the end of the NATO military alliance. President Trump has renewed his calls for the U.S. to take control of the strategic mineral-rich Arctic island. Her remarks came in the aftermath of the weekend military operation in Venezuela. The operation by U.S. forces led to the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores, left the world stunned and heightened concerns in Denmark and Greenland. AP correspondent Haya Panjwani reports on the anniversary of the Capitol riot.
It's the 5th anniversary of the January 6th attack on the Capitol. 5 years ago, outside the White House, the outgoing President Donald Trump told a crowd of his supporters to head to the Capitol in protest as Congress was affirming the 2020 election victory for Democrat Joe Biden. A short time later, the world watched as the seat of U.S. power descended into chaos. A mob made its way down Pennsylvania Avenue, battled police at the Capitol barricades, and stormed inside as lawmakers fled. There is no official event to memorialize what happened that day. Instead, Trump will meet privately with House Republicans at the Kennedy Center for a policy forum. Democrats, meanwhile, will hold a hearing with witnesses to the violence and later gather on the Capitol steps to mark the memory of what happened. 5 people died in the Capitol siege and its aftermath. The Justice Department indicted Trump on 4 counts in a conspiracy to defraud voters with his claims of a rigged election in the run-up to the January 6th attack. Haya Panjwani, Washington.
More on this story at apnews.com. This is AP News. AP correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports Israel's Air Force has struck areas in southern and eastern Lebanon.
A strike around 1 a.m. on Tuesday leveled a 3-story commercial building in the southern coastal city of Sidon a few days before Lebanon's army commanders scheduled to brief the government on its mission of disarming militant group Hezbollah in areas along the border with Israel. An AP photographer at the scene said the area was in a commercial district containing workshops and mechanic shops, and the building was uninhabited. At least one person was transported by ambulance, and rescue teams were searching the site for others, but no deaths have so far been reported. Israel's military says that they were targeting weapons storage sites and infrastructure belonging to militant groups Hezbollah and Hamas. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
More information at apnews.com. I'm Marcela.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Few spotty rain showers early today, otherwise cloudy skies with a high in the mid-40s. We'll have winds out of the south of 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. For tonight, mostly cloudy, a low near 33. By Wednesday, skies become mostly sunny, high 45 degrees. Then Thursday, a chance for some rain showers with cloudy skies, a high around 52. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 39. Straight Talk presents the math of more. Here's how it works. When you say yes to more with Straight Talk, you're left with more for all the other good stuff. So getting an unlimited plan starting at just $25 a month equals more savings for your family's weekend adventures. And with a network covered by Verizon, you can share more from wherever you go. It's simple math, really. More equals more with Straight Talk. Available at straighttalk.com and Walmart. Taxes and fees apply. The $25 plan requires a compatible unlocked device and a new line of service. Additional terms apply.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, progressives. Welcome to the January 6, 2026 edition of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, Of course, you can email me at richard@wcpt820.com. Follow me on X, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, Substack, and Spoutable. You can catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and, of course, iHeartRadio. There you can get Choose Views featured interviews, Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, It's the Democracy, Stupid, with Edwin Eisengraf. I just think sometimes, you walk up to someone and say, it's the democracy, stupid. So anyhow, Out Chicago and our other shows and interviews that we have, obviously, on this wonderful station. Make your way over to heartlandsignal.com so that you can catch a couple of interesting recent clips. U.S. Representative Mike Quigley blasting Trump, not trusting him when it comes to security guarantees. Also talking about failures of the administration in reversing President Biden's climate policy. And reversing climate policy, who does that help? I mean, that's the question you have to ask. And you can merge that up with, the oil companies and their prowess. But that's another clip that you can check out at Heartland Signal. And let's see. And then, of course, the announcement by Governor Walz, who is suspending his campaign for a third term as governor. So make your way over to heartlandsignal.com to check out our digital newsroom and digital platform. And you can see all the good stuff that we have there. On today's show, we will be joined by Mayor of Evanston, who's running for the congressional seat that Jan Schakowsky is no longer running for. Daniel Biss will be with us in the 7 o'clock hour. And then Democratic operative and leader of the Democratic Party in North Carolina, Anderson Clayton, will be with us in the 7:30 hour. Looking forward to both of our guests this morning and checking in with them to see what's happening in their worlds. And, of course, what they see about the current events, most definitely, as well as for Mayor Biss, what's happening with his election, or his campaign, I should say, and for Anderson, some of the things that are going on in politics in North Carolina and how, both on a state level and on a federal level, the seats down there are critically important to Dems taking back a certain amount of power. So looking forward to chatting with both of them. We've got some clips for you this morning that we'll bring to you on the current events. And I've got some updates that I want to share with you guys. And, of course, the ongoing story, which is developing into something else that I'm going to put out as a word, colonization. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But today is January 6th. And I can't believe it, Devin, but 5 years ago today, 2021, 5 years ago today, we saw citizens of this country attack our nation's capital. That's what it was. It wasn't anything other than that. It wasn't a peaceful, walk through the Capitol building. It wasn't any of that. And, Americans, United States of America, some folks in the United States of America have this adept ability to lie to themselves and just to tell themselves a bunch of BS. There was an attack on our Capitol. You can call it, if you want to live in that cloud and that fog and listen to the folks on the right. And I know that those of us that are progressive liberal Democrats and, all the rest that we call ourselves, we know we don't do that. But the folks who love to troll progressive shows and, like to hang out on social media and the internet and say that was it was a tourist event. You need to stop smoking or drinking whatever or injecting whatever it is that you do, because it was an attack on our Capitol, plain and simple. And if you want me to give you some space to say that Donald Trump wasn't at the tip of the spear of that or the cause for that, you can't make somebody do something. They have to make a decision to do it. I get all of that. If you want to take that out of the equation, it was still an attack on our Capitol. It was. And it was whoever orchestrated it, however many people there were that orchestrated it or were a part of it, okay. But it was still an attack on the nation's capital. Just like I said yesterday, we invaded Venezuela and we kidnapped their president. Now, we can get into all the subtext and all the he was a bad dude and all this other kind of stuff. We tend to do that. We try to justify the other side by saying something about the other side. You know, he was a really, bad guy, da-da-da. But, and we do that. I do that sometimes when, Democrats aren't perfect. But in the case with Maduro, irrespective of him being a, quote, bad guy, we invaded a nation and we took their president. We did. That's what we did. And I'm going to get into something that crossed my wire, and then I want to talk about this today. But we also can't fool ourselves that in terms of January 6th, coming back to that our nation's capital was attacked by a bunch of hooligans and hoodlums and bad people, overthinking that an election was stolen. So let me try this out on you for those who want to try to justify it. What if all the people who were descendants of enslaved Americans decided to say, you know what, we're ticked off too. We don't like the fact that this was stolen from. How about if the ancestors of the people who were part of the, Black Wall Street, our country attacked that city. That's what happened. They dropped bombs on that city. What about 1919 here in Chicago? What if the descendants of that said, you know what, we were wronged? We, like the people who try to justify saying that what happened on January 6th was about an election being stolen. What about the lives of decades of lives of black folks in this country whose lives were stolen? What if there were an uprising about that and it became a national event? What if every armed black person in the country decided, you know what, we're done with this. We're going to attack some capitals. What would people say about that? The people on the right, particularly. I mean, let's ask that question. I mean, no one. I do the what about and what if because it's to shine a light on how people want to give some sort of free pass to these knuckleheads that attack the Capitol. But if and justify it, so that's the reason I layer that in there and justify it because of an election in their mindset, based on their leader, was stolen. Okay, so if theft is the tip of the scale, then I could think of a lot of things that black folks in America could rise up and say, you know what, this was stolen from us over decades. So maybe we should arm up and decide to storm the nation's capital or storm other capitals in the country where the government in that state got behind raiding our communities. How about that? I bet you there would be a lot of people that would want that to be put down very quickly. The response would be a lot different. And America knows that. Okay? So let's not give these people comfort on this. I hate to call it an anniversary of January 6th, but, because people died. So, the memoriam, if you want a memorial of it, is heartbreaking. But, a bunch of hoodlums and hooligans decided to storm the nation's capital. That's what happened. They attacked the nation's capital. Do not let those words be changed by somebody out there that wants to soften it, just like the United States invaded Venezuela and kidnapped their president. So that's how I'm seeing it. Change my mind if you think you can. But right now, check this out, progressives.
Growing up down south, I was taught to never talk money, religion, or politics. The best compliment you would get was to be called nice. Oh, y'all, she is so nice. Better yet, to be called sweet. Y'all, she is the sweetest thing. That's how they kept us compliant and complicit. When I went to college, I learned a quote by Naomi Schulman. I want to read it for you. Nice people made the best Nazis. My mama grew up next to them. They got along, refused to make waves, looked the other way when things got ugly, and focused on happier things than politics. They were lovely people who turned their heads as their neighbors were dragged away. You know who weren't nice people? Resistors. Y'all, quit and being nice.
In case you don't recognize that voice, that's the woman's. It's Chris and Dave. They have become kind of a social media sensation. They are their commentary is right on point so many times, and they refer to themselves as just a couple of Southern oldish liberal veterans that now live in Detroit. But the point I'm making is, I said yesterday, gloves off, y'all. Being nice is, they're not all that, as President Obama says. They're not all that. And we have to remind them of that in 2026. By any means necessary. And stop being nice. Be respectful. But if a person doesn't deserve it, then they don't get it. If they don't deserve the nicest, they don't get it. And this January 6th, this date of this anniversary, if we will, we can't be nice to the people who decided to invade our capital. Can't let it happen. So there you go. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I am Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
This is WCPT telling you how you can shop blue. During Donald Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, and now even, he had his rallies where he poorly danced to the YMCA. Let's take a look at all the musicians who threatened to sue Donald Trump if he used any of their music at his rallies. ABBA, Adele, Aerosmith, Andrew Lloyd Webber, The Animals, Beyonce, Bruce Springsteen, Celine Dion, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Earth, Wind & Fire, Elton John, The Foo Fighters, Free, Guns N' Roses, Linkin Park, Neil Young, Nickelback, Olivia Rodrigo, Ozzy Osbourne, Panic at the Disco, Pharrell Williams, Phil Collins, and yes, that includes Genesis too, guys, The Estate of Prince, Queen, R.E.M., Rihanna, The Rolling Stones, Spinal Tap, Tom Petty, and Twisted Sister. So if you're looking to buy some records or go see a concert, I consider checking those artists out. This has been WCPT telling you how you can shop blue.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chu.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on Choose Views.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Choose Views, 773-763-9278. On this January 6th, 2026, a couple of Choose Views news items. Oil markets respond to U.S. action in Venezuela. Energy stocks rallied following the weekend capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who on Monday pleaded not guilty to weapons and drug-related charges in the U.S. Chevron, the only major American company currently operating in Venezuela, led the charge, while Conoco, Phillips, Exxon, Marathon also were part of the charge. President Donald Trump said U.S. oil companies would help, quote, fix the country's oil infrastructure, and anonymous reports claim the administration is planning to meet with oil executives this week. Estimates from experts such as an endeavor like this would take years and cost $100 billion. Where's that money going to come from, y'all? It better not It better not come from the pockets and the taxes of American citizens, as we don't rebuild our infrastructure and we're rebuilding theirs. But we know what the game is. Some numbers to watch this week. This new year is kicking off with a veritable avalanche of jobs data. This week, tomorrow specifically, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I should say, will release the job openings and labor turnover survey known as JOLTS for November of 2025. And on Friday, it will post the overall jobs data for December. Payroll provider ADP will share its own employment stats for the month of December. Here are some of the things to be aware of in terms of upcoming releases. Tomorrow, the payrolls data will be released, as well as the information from the Institute for Supply Management on monthly purchasing. Thursday, the U.S. Department of Labor, as I said, will release the initial jobless claims for last week. And then on Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics will release the December jobs report. So we'll keep you posted on that as we get to tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. U.S. manufacturing activity shrinks to a 14-month low. U.S. manufacturing activity shrank to its lowest level in more than a year. The Institute for Supply Management said yesterday that its manufacturing index fell from 48.2 to 47.9 in December. the 10th consecutive month under 50. Any reading under 50 indicates contraction. And who's the president during this period of time? It's not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. California debuts a new tool against the identity theft and spam. They've unveiled a new platform enabling residents to request the deletion of their personal information from data brokers. It's known as DROP. The Delete, Request, and Opt-out platform grants Californians the ability to stop more than 500 registered brokers from collecting and profiting off of data. Brokers will begin processing requests in August of 2026 this year and have 90 days to delete the information, including social security numbers. And then finally, Tesla. Shipments from China plummeted last year. This one actually surprised me, given all that we know, but their struggles extended throughout China last year. Shipments from the Shanghai factory dipped 7% in 2025. The country's Passenger Car Association preliminary report showed as Tesla ceded its spot in the global electric vehicle leaderboard to Chinese rival BYD. And we actually talked about this earlier last year, that could be happening. Shipments fell for the second straight year to 851,000, nearly 100,000 fewer than in 2023, though they did rise in December. Official figures do not break down the exports, but Bloomberg reported the bulk of vehicles are sold in China. Tesla suffered its second consecutive annual sales drop. Meanwhile, they're talking about putting more money in Elon's pocket. There you go, guys. A couple of Choose Views news items on this January 6, 2026. All right, guys. So let's see. We've got a couple of calls. Okay. All right. Well, let me chat about a couple quick things, and then we may grab a call before we get to the break. So a little bit of irony. I talked about this earlier when we talked about things that are happening in one of the pieces that's over at Heartland Signal in terms of Governor Walz stepping down or deciding not to suspending his campaign for a third term as governor. Let me say it the right way. So I saw something interesting that I thought would be compelling, if you will. But let's just play this out. Let's say that, because you guys may have heard that Senator Amy Klobuchar is going to run for governor. All right. So a little bit of irony could be that two levels of irony. One could be that he, meaning Governor Walz, content with him not seeking a third term and Amy Klobuchar deciding that she's going to run, and if she has to give up her Senate seat to do that, wouldn't it be kind of cool to see then the still sitting Governor Walz appoint whoever he's going to appoint to Amy Klobuchar's seat, and that person would be Al Franken. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. I had that thought pop into my brain. That's one thought. The other one is she runs, wins, becomes governor, and then decides, and this is all built off of her deciding to, not run, to step away from her Senate seat. Runs, becomes governor, and then turns around and appoints Governor Walz as the person for her seat. I don't know. It's all about timing and what voters get out and do. But I thought about that. I said, that would be an interesting turn of events. Call me crazy, but it's just one of those things that popped into my brain. All right, let's grab a quick call before we go to this break, Devin. Let's talk to Andre here in Chicago. Good morning, Andre. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning to you, Mr. Q. Happy New Year to you and your family and the rest of the listening crew and your staff.
You too, man.
I called because on this January 6th, I don't want us to forget the role the Supreme Court played in this. Yeah. I think at this point, during the midterms and beyond the midterms, Democrats should focus on trying to win over some of those Republican congressmen so that they'll have a 60-vote threshold to reform the Supreme Court, which is term limits or expanding the Supreme Court. It's not for us. It's to save our democracy. It's the Supreme Court that allowed Donald Trump. If they had not said that he was a king and that he can do whatever he pleases, we wouldn't find ourselves this way. And then the Republicans, Donald Trump was impeached twice, but the Republicans refused to remove him.
Yep.
So I think it's critical that we take a focus on the Supreme Court because they guilty as all get up with everything Trump's doing now. Those 6 Republican Supreme Court justices, they should be held accountable for what is taking place.
Yeah.
That's what I want to say, Mr. Chu.
Hey, Andre, first of all, thank you for that contribution. Go ahead.
Last thing, Mr. Chu, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I had to say it before I forget. Also, that 60-vote threshold to require more to be president of the United States. With what Donald Trump done, if we don't change the requirements for presidency, somebody can come along and pick up where he left off. To be 35 years old, to be a natural-born citizen, and to be 35 natural-born citizen, live to 14 years, that's nowhere nearly enough for the type of power we give a president. You don't even need a high school diploma or pass a background check. I think that's kind of shallow to be president of the United States. That's what I want to add, Mr. G.
No, Andre, thank you for that. We're going to chat a little bit. I know you may have to run, but I want to say a couple things. One, first of all, thank you for your call and contribution this morning. That's first and foremost. And thanks for paying attention.
Yes,
thanks for paying attention in civics class, because I would guess that a lot of people don't know what the minimum requirements are. But to your point, we need to expand that list of requirements for presidents. Supreme Court, I'm exactly with you in terms of expanding the Supreme Court. I think that's the solution, but it does take that majority. It does take people deciding they're going to participate and get involved. And that leads me to asking you a question. It's 2026. You know what we're up against. You are a strong, you're a fighter. I can tell when you've called in before. I've always appreciated you being plugged into what's happening. But Andre, tell us what you're doing this year, or what you're going to be doing in 2026 to kind of to move this ball down the field a little bit.
Talking to my relatives. I have relatives in my family that's not full-fledged Republican, but they're Republican-leaning. So I continue to talk policy with them when we gather, when we visit relatives in the nursing homes and so forth. We have our conversations. I stress the importance to them to get involved, because even though they may be well off financially, there are members in the family that are not well off that need social programs, and they need these social policies. They need SNAP benefits and stuff. So I'll continue to carry that conversation with my relatives. They say reparations, it starts at home. So I'll continue to talk with them and get them to understand what we're up against. That's what my role is going to be, and encourage them to vote, participate.
That's powerful, Andre. I'm proud of you, and I'm honored to have you as a person that listens and calls into the show. So thank you so much for that. Stay safe. Call us again. Stay in touch. We want to be a support system for you as well, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chu. I appreciate it. Have
a great day and stay safe. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Andre has called us a number of times in the past, and I appreciate his contributions. But he's spot on. A couple things he said. Let us not forget. Expanding Supreme Court. Yes. More. We've got to be a little bit more stringent in terms of who gets to be elected president of the United States. And this Trump debacle, 2 terms, has shown to us that we have to be that. We have to be better at who we, not who we elect, but what the requirements are. Because if the requirements are steeper and stronger and more, the threshold is a bigger threshold, then we might get better leaders. And many of you might be saying, but Richard, that should be the case for everybody running. I wouldn't disagree with you there. However, for the presidency and the vice presidency, those folks need to be, I'm not talking about purity tests and all that garbage. I'm just saying that we need to establish a little bit more. For example, what popped into my mind when Andre was talking about the age and the natural-born citizen age and length of time of living, what also popped into my mind is every person that becomes a nominee has to deliver their tax. We have to see their tax returns. One of the things about Trump that would have been an expose that would have blown a lot of people away is if his tax returns had been truly made public the first time around. We've almost kind of forgotten about that because of the amount of garbage that's come at us with Trump. But the tax returns are critical. I could care less about their marital. When I say care less, I don't mean this literally. But the man or woman, who, if they've been married or if they're not, if they're Christian or if they're not, if they're that doesn't impress me. I want to know if they've done anything that's going to be financially harmful to the country, and Trump clearly did. And his tax returns, if they were so pure, then he would have said, "Yeah, here they are." So that's one that sticks into my mind. It comes to mind right quick. But in any event, thanks, Andrea. We got to hit a break for bringing that up to us. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Progressive knows there are some surprisingly expensive things in life, like rugs. And people say a rug would really bring the room together. And sure, you don't know what that means, but it sounds important. Suddenly you're using words like jute and sisal. Then you see the price and lose it, because how can the thing you walk and spill on cost so much? So you devote your life to taking down Big Rug. But then you remember that switching your home and auto to Progressive could save you hundreds. So, looks like Big Rug is safe. For now. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
I'm Ed Evans, CEO of Consumer Cellular. No, we're not one of the big guys. Truth is, we don't want to be. If you're over 50, Big Wireless probably has you paying for more data than you might need. You could be throwing away thousands over a lifetime.
Our entry-level data plans start at just $20 a month. And for a limited time, switch and get your second month free. Call 1-888-FREEDOM, visit consumercellular.com or a store near you and get your second month free today. Plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing. See site for additional details.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Few spotty rain showers early today, otherwise cloudy skies with a high in the mid-40s. We'll have winds out of the south of 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. For tonight, mostly cloudy, a low near 33. By Wednesday, skies become mostly sunny, high 45 degrees. Then Thursday, a chance for some rain showers with cloudy skies, a high around 52. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 39.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. So listen, I mentioned the word colonization earlier. And so I'm going to come at you pretty quickly with a few things because I want to get to a couple of clips. But taking over a country, we'll run it. Just the arrogance. I have to do. Can you imagine if? But could you imagine if Barack Obama had said, you know what? I'm just not down with what's happening in pick any European country, any non-brown skinned country in Europe. Can you imagine if Barack Obama had said, I'm just not down with how they are, and they've got these issues that have historically been problems, and the people there are suffering. The rationalization that the right wants to use with Venezuela. And he said, yeah, let's go snatch so-and-so. Can you imagine? People in this country, from those countries, would have lost their damn minds. I mean, really. And I say this on January 6th because of the fact that our nation's capital was attacked. Those words, we invaded a country, Venezuela, and we kidnapped their president. Now, you can try to rationalize it, like I said before. Same thing with January 6th. But can you imagine? I have to go there. Can you imagine? This is one of those what are the rules? Had President Barack Obama done that to a European country? Can you just imagine? So there you go. But colonization is something that is a concern. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples. So we saw that what the Prime Minister said about the U.S. and by the way, the Prime Minister of Greenland spoke about this, of Denmark spoke about this in terms of Greenland. Paraphrase, but basically all diplomatic alliances are going to cease. Imagine that. because we want to colonize Greenland. For what? To take their resources. I said this yesterday. I said in part last Friday, it's all about the resources. It has been for weeks in this conversation. Nigeria, it's about the resources. Gaza, it's about the resources. I read those numbers yesterday in terms of who has what. I kept it for a reason. Gaza has gas, Sudan has gold, Congo has cobalt, Venezuela has oil. Greenland has other natural minerals. So that's what it's about. So don't fool ourselves. Don't let yourself, be fooled, taken by the okie doke. Just don't do it. Where else is it happening, though? This is the other part of the conversation in terms of colonization. Burkina Faso, a country in the continent of Africa, whose president, Ibrahim Traore, he's standing strong. This is one of those, I have to do the comparisons think about this. The government of France has decided that they, believe it or not, aren't down with what Burkina Faso is doing in terms of sustaining itself and protecting its natural resources. But France wants to have a different say about it. And they're upset that this African leader has said no to them. So where are we with this? And let's be honest, there's some U.S. backing because of the way in which the U.S. government is looking the other way when it comes to what the leader of France is doing in terms of Burkina Faso. What is it about? Because he's not doing anything to harm his people that we know of. Let's just put this out here. If that were the case, then the corporate media in the United States of America would be making a big deal out of it, and the federal government would be as well. The U.S. federal government would be making a big deal out of it. So it's not about the people and the treatment of the people by the leadership in Burkina Faso. It's about the resources. It's about the resources. And to some extent, some colonization. Greenland, not so much about colonization, more specifically about the resources. Burkina Faso, resources, colonization. Venezuela, not so much colonization, resources. But I don't see the uproar coming from sort of the mainstream of the United States about what's happening in Africa, in African countries, I should say. And Burkina Faso is a good example of where are the voices on that. But it's coming there too. And it's going to be either directly or indirectly backed by the U.S. France will probably get a pass on this one. I'm just saying, again, I always put this out there. I could be wrong. But if we don't talk about it, then to me, it's more wrong to not talk about it than to talk about it and not be 100%, be 100% accurate, because it's a moving, it's an ongoing story. It's a moving target. So we can adjust, and I will adjust. No apologies. But we'll clean it up if we're not right. But we don't talk about it, then that's a bigger problem. So colonization is something that's out there. It's something that I think we've got to be realistic that's a move that certain countries in the world are, or a plan, I should say, that certain countries in the world are moving toward. And not enough people are talking about that. Taking over this technocracy, technocratic takeover of certain things in terms of data and information, taking over countries and their resources, running another country. That's about global consolidation of power. And it's global consolidation of power by white men. Because trust me when I tell you this, if a brown-skinned country decided to rise up and say the United States is mistreating certain people that look like us, to use some of the playbook that the United States has used, there'd be hell. Just trust. That's why I made the comparison to January 6th and what happened with the destruction of Black Wall Street. Trust me, if a brown-skinned nation said, we don't like the way you're treating people in the United States of America in these particular communities, we don't like how you've stolen resources from, and the list goes on, and decided to launch an uprising against the United States and snatch some of our people. This is why I said our embassies could potentially be at risk. Oh, yeah, there'd be a lot of hell raising then. And here's the thing. Progressive liberal Democrats know that I'm right about that, or certainly well in the ballpark on that. And that's where the fight, I think, has to be. It's in talking about that which people don't want to talk about. It's in pushing back. And 2026 is going to be a year of that. I promise you that it will be. There's no question in my mind. And I know that there are those of you out there who don't think that, who might, that this was an appropriate thing to do because of how bad Maduro is. Well, like I said yesterday, then let's go after Putin. Let's go after Putin. I mean, Putin's a bad guy. There's no question about that. There's no, well, he's kind. No, he is. But what is it that he wears? A different costume. And a country that the United States has a president that's probably in some ways beholden to the president of another country, that being Vladimir Putin. So, you guys can believe what you want to believe. Question I want to ask you. This one is another one that popped up in my brain. A lot of things pop up in my brain, so careful. Safe, not a safe place to be sometimes. I saw this conversation that there are Hispanic voters who are upset with Democrats for being upset with the president's administration and the military action in Venezuela. What do you guys think about that? I mean, there's Hispanic voters that are some, and it's coming from the right, that are saying that Democrats have lost all Hispanic votes because of the way in which Democrats have been pushing back on this invasion and kidnapping. So, give me some thoughts there. I'm curious where you guys might land on that conversation, where you might land on that subject. So let me know if you have some thoughts. You can send me a text, or you can give us a quick holler. I'm going to play a clip for you guys before we take this break, because it does it ties us to where we are today on January 6th. And it's one from Jack Smith, that he speaks about what he knew, what he saw, what was real. And just listen to this as we talk about this current time we're in, January 6th, and Trump leaving office, 4 plus years ago, and what went down then.
For nearly 3 decades, I've been a career prosecutor. I've served during both Republican and Democratic administrations, and I've been guided by those principles in every role I've held. I continued to honor those principles when I was appointed to serve as special counsel in November of 2022. The decision to bring charges against President Trump was mine, but the basis for those charges rests entirely with President Trump and his actions, as alleged in the indictments returned by grand juries in 2 different districts. Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election and to prevent the lawful transfer of power. Our investigation also developed powerful evidence that showed that President Trump willfully retained highly classified documents after he left office in January of 2021, storing them at his social club, including in a ballroom and a bathroom. He then repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. I remain grateful for the counsel, judgment, and advice of my team as I executed my responsibilities. I am both saddened and angered that President Trump has sought revenge against career prosecutors, FBI agents, and support staff simply for doing their jobs and for having worked on those cases. These dedicated public servants are the best of us, and they have been wrongly vilified and improperly dismissed from their jobs. I made my decisions in the investigation without regard to President Trump's political association, activities, beliefs, or candidacy in the 2024 presidential election. We took our actions based on the facts and the law, the very lessons I learned early in my career as a prosecutor. We followed Justice Department policies and observed legal requirements. The timing and speed of our work reflects the strength of the evidence and our confidence that we would have secured convictions at trial. If asked whether to prosecute a former president based on the same facts today, I would do so regardless of whether that president was a Republican or a Democrat.
And I believe that last statement like my next breath of fresh air. I believe he would do the same thing no matter who what the political stripe of that person happened to be. So that was Jack Smith. And ironically, this invasion and all the other things and distractions that have taken place are all in the bucket of Epstein files, documents being stolen, and all the rest. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you guys about a couple of text messages that we received about presidential qualifications. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Check Up on Health with Chris Whitting.
Panic attacks occur most in teens or young adults, often without warning or reason. Dr. Jack Vaith of Shepherd Pratt Hospital in Baltimore.
Most people are so embarrassed by their panic attacks, they will fail to share them with their parents. And so they tend to live for many years with them until they get to a point where they say, this has been going on for 10 years, but it's now happening daily instead of weekly or monthly. And that's the lingering fear of panic attacks. I'm going to be out in public, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because I don't know what brings them on. I don't know how to get rid of them. Therefore, I'm going to start avoiding the public. This is how many people become agoraphobic. They're not going to leave their house for fear that they will end up subject to public humiliation as a result of one of these attacks where they can't escape and disappear.
If you have panic attacks, tell a friend. Tell your parents. Talk to a counselor. With Checkup on Health, I'm Chris Whitting.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Views with Richard Chu.
Welcome back to the show. So Andre called in a little bit ago and said that he's not pleased and thinks that we should change, and I agree with him. The requirements, qualifications, the bar when it comes to president. So I had a couple of interesting texts that I want to read to you guys. This one, okay. This one says, "Hi, Richard. How about not letting a convicted felon run for president? That should be the number one requirement." Right on, 847. I would agree with you. A convicted felon, and Trump was convicted. You guys realize that? He was convicted 34 times. What were we calling it last year? 34 XF or whatever. I forgot now. 34-time convicted felon. 34 times. We're almost like forgetting about that. And I understand that we would because we're a fast-moving train as a society. But that's what happened. So that was one. Let me get to another one real quickly. Hold on. Okay, when the rules who could run for president were made, only white landowning wealthy men could vote. I agree the rules should be updated to reflect who is in politics today. The standards are too low. That comes from our good friend Lois. Thanks, Lois, for reminding us of that. Let's see what else we got out here. Bear with me, guys. Let's see. Those are two to that space. So there you go. All right. Just wanted to read those to you. I like the one, though. How about not letting a convicted felon? Yeah, we forget about that. And forget's maybe not the right word, but it just sort of, it's in the back of our minds. We haven't forgotten about it. We elect the country, 78 million people, elected a convicted felon. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? Wow. Wow. And here's another one this makes me laugh. Democrats already have a stringent vetting process to be president. It's called bowing down to corporations and having public and private. Some people crack me up, Devin. It's always about what the Democrats aren't doing. But we have so let's just put this in perspective. That may be the case for the person that sent this to us. I won't mention your name. But the Republicans have elected the trash that's in the White House twice. That's who you guys put up. So I'm sure this person is may want to call him. I don't know if this person's progressive or not, but I do know that the Republicans are the ones that put up this trash, and their senators are too, and their House members are too. So there, take that. All right, let's see when we got one more. Let's see. Okay, that's not about... here's one. This is regarding Maduro. So let's see. This is coming from Nancy. So many Spanish stations are owned by conservative companies, and I'm sure they are focused on what a bad person Maduro is and the fact that he stole the election. In addition, the Spanish listeners are being told how much cocaine that he has brought to the United States, but the truth doesn't matter. Okay. Yeah, good point. All right, let's see what else we got here. That was okay. So earlier I read one that says, how about not letting a convicted felon run for president? To me, that should be the number one requirement. And I agree. That comes from our one of our listeners, Andrea. You are welcome, Andrea. Thanks for keeping us smart this morning. So speaking of this Maduro situation, and speaking of what our country did in terms of invading a country and kidnapping their president, we got a couple other clips that I want you guys to hear in terms of what this really gets into and what it's really about. Let's go to the one from Representative Joaquin Castro.
It's as if the president didn't learn any of the lessons from Iraq or Afghanistan, didn't learn any of the lessons on regime change, and he's done a complete 180 from where he was as a candidate who pitched himself to the American people as a peace president, and now has taken us to war in Venezuela, has overthrown their leader, and is threatening to take us to war in places like Colombia and Mexico as well.
Have you, Congressman, just kind of like on a philosophical level, have you thought of what Donald Trump's foreign policy doctrine is? I mean, it seems for anyone who's watching Pete Hegseth these days, it's FAFO, which seems to be like the motto that they're really proud of, which is like mess around and find out. It seems like that's what they're using as a threatening menace to leaders all across the region around the world. But do you see something more deeper than that as a foreign policy doctrine by the Trump administration?
I wouldn't say that it's deeper. I think his foreign policy is make Trump rich. I don't think he's doing what's in the best interest of the United States of America or even Venezuela. I think he's doing what's in the best interest of himself and a small circle of cronies that he's going to help take over industries in Venezuela and make billions of dollars off of. And it's it's in a way, as an American, it's sad to say that about an American president. But I really believe at this point that when the Supreme Court issued that ruling that gave Donald Trump wide immunity for quote unquote official acts, that to him was taking off any kind of guardrails or shackles and basically in his mind allowed him to do whatever he wants to do to make money for his cronies and in some cases his family. You think about the proposed development of condos and other real estate in Gaza that Jared Kushner was going to be a part of. Jared Kushner going to be part of that Paramount deal and then got shamed into backing off of it. The Trump company still doing real estate deals all over the world. And so I think this is another play for Donald Trump and the people that he wants to help make money. And in the meantime, you have Americans right now who are losing their health care coverage because Donald Trump and the Republicans allow those health care subsidies to lapse.
So, yeah, one of the things, Eric Grant and I talk about this quite a bit, is that the country just doesn't have the temperament to put these kinds of guys in jail and keep them there. That's how we have a convicted felon. Think about that for a second. And thank you guys for reminding me of this. Again, fast-moving train, sometimes things are in the back of my mind. We elected a convicted felon who now is doing convicted felon stuff, invading a country, snatching their president, and like Representative, and by the way, that was Representative Joaquin Castro speaking on MS Now. A convicted felon is doing convicted felon stuff. And when I listened to Representative talk about this, what came to mind is this is out of the Putin playbook. Get rid of people, grab up their resources. Get rid of more people, grab up their resources. That's what this Ukraine thing is really. It's not about recapturing the country so that Russia's old USSR, whatever, can be made whole again. It has nothing to do with that. That's the okie doke. It's about grabbing up space. That's the same thing. That's what's happening with Israel and Palestine. That's what's always been there. And I know that this year I'm going to probably piss some people off. Excuse my language. I'm going to tick some people off this year when it comes to last year by design. I didn't talk a lot about Israel and Palestine, but this year I will. And the primary reason I will is because of the link between this administration and what's happening in Gaza. And, you know, we've been touching around the edges of, you know, Kushner. And the reason I'm saying this about my conversations this year on Israel, the Israeli government, let me be more specific, and Palestine, is because of the history. And a lot of people don't want to talk about the history. But Representative Castro leaned into that a little bit when he talked about Jared Kushner and what's happening and what Jared's going to be tied to. Let's just be honest, America. This country is about grabbing other people's stuff. And that's why we've had these coups that we've been we either backed in its entirety or in part. It's about grabbing stuff. So we got to stop living in this safety bubble. Oh, I don't want to know about that. I don't want to hear about that. I just want to take my kids to soccer and dance and that. Forget that. No disrespect to those who do that. But doggone it, this is where we are. This country is taking other people's stuff. And I know that may not be the most eloquent way of putting it, but if it cuts through the noise, and it cuts through the noise. They're going into other countries and taking their stuff. That's what this is all about. That's what Netanyahu wants to do in the Middle East, was particularly with Israel, the Israeli government in Palestine. That's what that's all about. Putin is the same way. So we got to stop lying about this to ourselves if we're going to be a nation that's trying to heal places of the world. Just look at the scam that comes out of this White House. Did you guys know, just another update, the U.S. expands the list of countries whose citizens must pay up to $15,000 bonds to apply for visas. But here's what's crazy about it. You want to know the countries? You want to know the countries? I'll read them to you. There's 13 countries in all, but 2 of them in Africa are now on the list, which makes the process of attaining a U.S. visa unaffordable for many. The State Department last week quietly added Bhutan, Botswana, the Central African Republic, Guinea-Bissau, Namibia, and Turkmenistan to the list. What is it that each of those countries all have in common? You remember when Trump was caught on a hot mic saying he didn't want people coming to this country from those S-hole countries? He wanted them to come from, places that are white places. Here we go. Here we go. So my question is, who's going to stand up in this space and speak about it? Well, I'm certainly going to do my part. But I want to see more of the people that Dr. Kevin Schultz in his book talks about speak up. The ones that he says in the title of the book, Why Everybody Hates White Liberals, Including White Liberals. Okay, that's where the fight's got to come from, in addition to those that are already on the field, the battlefield. And that may pinch some people in the backside, and if it does, then maybe you should pay attention. Don't be offended by it. Be inspired by it. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back. Hey, progressives, it's Richard Chu, host of Choose Views, weekdays 6 to 8 a.m. Central. We're all anxious for the 2026 midterm election to arrive so we can restore some sanity and much-needed oversight to our government. In fact, it's the most important midterm election in American history, and Choose Views will be in the thick of it, bringing you candidate interviews on a regular basis. I'll be talking to Democratic Party hopefuls running for House and Senate at the federal and state level, as well as candidates for governor and other state and local offices.
I am in love with our ability to fight for our rights, to fight for our future, to fight for our freedoms, to fight as our ancestors fought. It's just our moment. This is just our time to stand up and to speak up. We can't give up on this.
If you miss any of the interviews live, you'll be able to find them all on WCPT's candidate interviews page at heartlandsignal.com/candidates. That's Choose Views, weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. a.m. on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk for 20 years.
Straight Talk presents The Math of More. Here's how it works. When you say yes to more with Straight Talk, you're left with more for all the other good stuff. So getting an unlimited plan starting at just $25 a month equals more savings for your family's weekend adventures. And with a network covered by Verizon, you can share more from wherever you go. It's simple math, really. More equals more with Straight Talk. Available at straighttalk.com and Walmart. Taxes and fees apply. The $25 plan requires a compatible unlocked device and a new line of service. Additional terms apply.
Start off the new year on a healthier note by taking active liver supplements from New Nordic every day. Available online at Amazon or newnordicusa.com or at your local CVS, ShopRite, Meijer Grocery, or Wegmans.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. House Speaker Mike Johnson is insisting that the U.S. military strikes in Venezuela over the weekend were legal and that administration officials fulfilled their obligations to Congress.
Look, I can tell you, as Speaker of the House, as the person who's in charge of defending Article I powers, I'm just going to insist to you that those have not been traversed in any way by what happened here.
Democrats, on the other hand, raised questions about the administration's plans. Here's Senator Chris Murphy.
The more we learn, the more we realize how fundamentally corrupt this action is. It has nothing to do with Venezuelan people because it appears as if they are leaving Maduro's party in charge. The repression will continue. It has nothing to do with drugs coming to the United States because Venezuela wasn't sending drugs to the United States. They were sending drugs to Europe. Increasingly, Donald Trump is saying out loud that it's just about the oil.
In Cuba, officials lowered flags before dawn yesterday to mourn 32 security officers they say were killed in the U.S. weekend strike in Venezuela. The South American nation is Cuba's closest ally. The two governments are so close that Cuban soldiers and security agents were often the Venezuelan president's bodyguards. Severing Cuba from Venezuela could have disastrous consequences for its leaders, and many Cuban residents are wondering what the capture of President Nicolás Maduro means for their future. Meanwhile, the Mexican government and analysts dismissed the likelihood of U.S. military intervention against Mexican drug cartels, despite threats from President Trump. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum's administration has been complying with Washington's demands, and the economic ties between the two countries are vital, they say. World shares advanced today while U.S. futures edged lower. The prices of oil and precious metals also climbed. This is AP News.
AP Sports, I'm Gethin Coolbaugh. Kevin Durant scored 26 points and hit a three-pointer with 1.1 seconds left to lift the Rockets over the Suns 197 in his first game against his former team since being traded to Houston. The Pistons routed the Knicks 121-90 behind 29 for Cade Cunningham. The Nuggets topped the 76ers 125-124 in overtime without injured star Nikola Jokic. College hoops, Arizona held on to the number one spot in the AP Top 25 by a single point over Michigan. Montana State won its first national championship since 1984, beating Illinois State 35-34 in OT in the football championship subdivision title game. NFL, the Raiders fired coach Pete Carroll, the Browns fired Kevin Stefanski, and the Cardinals fired Jonathan Gannon, and the Giants are retaining GM Joe Shane. Gethin Coolbaugh, AP Sports.
And I'm Marcela Sanchez.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Few spotty rain showers early today, otherwise cloudy skies with a high in the mid-40s. We'll have winds out of the south at 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. For tonight, mostly cloudy, a low near 33. By Wednesday, skies become mostly sunny, high 45 degrees. Then Thursday, a chance for some rain showers with cloudy skies, a high around 52. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 39.
Progressive knows there are some surprisingly expensive things in life, like rugs. And people say a rug would really bring the room together. And sure, you don't know what that means, but it sounds important. Suddenly you're using words like jute and sisal. Then you see the price and lose it, because how can the thing you walk and spill on cost so much? So you devote your life to taking down Big Rug. But then you remember that switching your home and auto to Progressive could save you hundreds. So, looks like Big Rug is safe. For now. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us on this January 6, 2026. An anniversary of sorts in terms of people that decided to invade and attack our capital. So we put our memory out to those who were injured and harmed that we're trying to defend that. We got a lot of defenders. We got a strong bench right now in our party on a local level, on a state, and on a national level. And in Illinois right now, many of you know, all over the country, we've got some big races, some big names that have been leaders for a while that are not running again. Dick Durbin's not running for his Senate seat. Jan Schakowsky, House Representative for a number of years, is not running for her seat in the 11th District, Congressional District here in Illinois. And so we've been fortunate. We've got a great team. We've got a great bench. One of those people is one of those fighters here in Illinois. That's the mayor of the great city of Evanston, Illinois, is Mayor Daniel Biss. Good morning, Mayor Biss, and welcome to Choose Views on WCPT.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you hanging out with us this morning, and I know that now that we kick off the new year and we what's the phrase? Everything heats up when you get into the political season, and so here we are. It's 2026. And we're starting down that path of the midterms. And you obviously threw your hat in the ring in terms of this Illinois 9th Congressional District. And a lot of people are excited about that. Talk to us about, where you are right now mentally as we are in the season. Talk to us about what your thoughts are, what you're feeling, how you're getting yourself welled up for this race.
Well, Happy New Year. We are 10 weeks from primary day, March 17th. And, here's what it feels like to me. We are living through this unbelievable time. Donald Trump is the president, where over the weekend he effectuated an illegal attack of Venezuela. We've spent the entire fall and early winter in the Chicago area, and Evanston in particular, watching masked armed men maraud through our streets, kidnapping our neighbors, making life unsafe for children, tear gassing kids. And so I think people are just desperate for somebody who's going to get in there and fight. And unfortunately, as mayor of Evanston, I've had to show what kind of fighter I am, standing face-to-face with Greg Bovino, pushing back against ICE, protecting our neighbors as they're under attack. And I think ultimately we're in a situation where people want to know, will we have elected leaders who are ready for the fight, who are ready to win, who have backbone, who aren't going to cave, who aren't going to flinch, who aren't going to fold. And I believe I've shown that in my time in office, both here as mayor of Evanston and before that as a state legislator. And I think that's what's going to carry us to victory in this primary.
I would agree with you strongly. What's the phrase, Mayor Biss? A picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, in this case, it's much more than that. And the image of you standing toe to toe, if you will, with Greg Bovino. And here's what I loved about that. And there's been a number of people that I've talked with that have been at protests here in Illinois, specifically, in the Chicago metropolitan area, Broadview, and all the rest. But here's what I really liked about that: the optics of you standing toe to toe with him. He had all his gear on, and you were just there with, your sweater and your collar and your light overcoat. and I have to give you your props in that space, because I was like, that's how we do. Those of us that are from Chicago or Illinois and more broadly, and Mayor Johnson said this, and you probably have heard him say it, we're built differently. And they weren't expecting, meaning ICE, Bovino particularly, for you to be that way. But you showed him, and you didn't get all huffy and puffed out your chest and all that garbage. You just stood there, and you had a grown man's conversation with them and said, not on my watch. And that you're right. I can tell you right now, Mayor Biss, that people want Democratic folks that are running for office and those who are currently in office, but those who are new to running for federal office, they want people that are going to be willing to bring in a sledgehammer and knock some tables over. That's my phrase, but I'm putting that out there because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people are, not that policy is not important, but people want people that are going to fight for whatever the policy is that they believe in. Is that a fair statement in terms of what you're hearing from people that you're talking to on the campaign?
It is, and I think it's true for two reasons. Part of it's what we're talking about, just, hey, look at what we're up against. We need someone who is going to have the courage to stand toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and his administration and use the powers of Congress, hopefully, by the way, with the Democratic majority, to do oversight and accountability, if necessary, impeachment. But part of it is, hey, how many politicians have come and gone and said the right thing and nothing has changed? And so who's going to get it done? Who's going to have the courage and the backbone to say, I know that if you're not willing to take some heat, you're not going to be able to make change. I know that if when the going gets tough, you shrink away, it's not going to make a difference to have you in there. And so I think people really want somebody who's actually going to make a difference. I think part of why we're here, part of why Donald Trump became president, not once but twice, is that people are so cynical, so frustrated to see so many serious problems in our society just not get solved as government is stuck, that they want someone who they can actually count on to make things happen.
Yeah, I think that, and it's funny, I wrote this down in terms of my notes and in terms of chatting with you this morning, how we got here. What happened to get us here? And if we... what is it that we as a party have to do, not can do, but we have to do to change what we did or did not do to get us here? My take on it, Mayor Biss, is that a lot of people got comfortable, not just the elected officials, but people who are regular everyday voters. I mean, how in the heck do 89 million people not show up to vote in a national election when these kinds of this kind of stuff was at risk and on the table? So what do you think is the disconnect there? And I know this is kind of a multi-parted question, but by design, what is it that has happened in terms of people not paying attention or not being plugged in? I know you use the word cynical, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a big question. There's a lot of different components to the answer, but I'm going to share with you the component that I think is most important. I kind of alluded to it a minute ago, but let me go in a little bit deeper. People are hurting in this country. And I'm not just talking about people living in deep poverty, though obviously poverty is a moral crime. I'm talking about people who they've got a job but they can't really afford housing. Or you've got couples that have jobs and decent incomes, but they can't afford to start a family because childcare is so expensive in this family. And by the way, our parental leave policies stink. Right? Yep. Or people who can't afford health care. And by the way, on January 1st, lots of people's health care premiums went through the roof because of the Republicans in Congress. And I think people are looking around and saying, now, how is it that we as a country are so wealthy and yet so many of us, not 5% or 10%, but 50, 60, 70% are living right on the edge, are one broken down car and expensive payment away from just not being able to make it? And I think there's an answer to that question, by the way. I think we've seen for 50 years, corporations have gotten bigger, they've consolidated, they've got this kind of near monopoly power across the economy. Labor unions have shrunk, right? And so the dial of power has shifted from workers to corporations, from consumers to corporations. And the result is lots of us can't make it or can barely make it or are living right near the edge. I think Democrats need to have an answer for that. What are we going to do? How are we going to enforce antitrust laws, which, by the way, are already on the books to break up big corporations and halt this rise in corporate power? What are we going to do to rebuild a strong labor movement so that workers actually have power in the marketplace and in the workplace? And there are good policy answers to these questions, which is the good news. But I think as a party, we need to tell that story more clearly so that people who are just living life and trying to figure out why they can't afford a home understand that voting for Democrats is the answer to that problem.
Yeah, and I think that we maybe misread, and I don't want this to be just a harp on what Democrats are not doing, because I try to balance that out. We, at the end of the day, our ideas, and I've said this hundreds of times on this show, Mayor Biss, our ideas are better. It's the implementation of them that's where we get stuck. And Republican ideas are not about moving us forward. There's not a doggone thing that I can name any Republican at any level, on a mayor's level, and all the way up, that have done in the last 20 years of my life, if not further back to as an adult, that they've done that have benefited and moved the country forward for masses of people. It's been about less of that and more about, to your point, consolidation of power. Look at what happened in the 80s with Reagan. It was about consolidation then. It's continued that way with Bush 1. It happened with Bush 2. It happened with Trump 1. It's this consolidation on a corporate level, and now we see it on a global level with this invasion. Because I'm calling it as I see it, Mayor Biss. We invaded Venezuela and we kidnapped their president. That's what we did. There's nothing. Any other words, I believe, are just trying to water it down a little bit. And the same thing with January 6th, which is the day we're in. Our nation was attacked by its own citizens. It wasn't a tour. That's what happened. So we've got to, I think, in that.
Well, hold on. Our nation was attacked by its own citizens who were being encouraged by their president.
Yes, even further.
The president fomented an attack on the Capitol. We'll never forget that. We'll never whitewash that. That's what happened on that day.
And that's why I
guess 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know. That's why I keep saying we have to be willing. And this, just to circle back to what you said about the answers, we have to be willing to say what it is that's the problem, and then be clear and break it down what the answers will be and who they will impact the most. You, as someone that has the math background, understand the importance of, breaking something down to its most finite piece, and then saying, okay, now that we've done that, here's how we put it back together and make it right for so many people. And I think that you're right. The country is craving that. And the Democrats have better ideas to get to that point. So I wanted to ask you that question in terms of if what your take is in that space. Let me ask you about another area, term limits. And when I say term limits, I'm not talking about the Supreme Court. Kind of a different approach. One of my listeners sent me this and said, the Senate has 6 years, the House has 2. Maybe the House should be that should be 3, so that you can spend more time actually legislating and getting things done, rather than having every year and a half you're now campaigning again. And I know this is your first bite at the apple at this level, but what are your thoughts about that? I mean, you get elected. Do you think that there's a place for us having 3 years for the House rather than just 2? And I know it's a constitutional change. I get all that.
Yeah, I think that's one option. I think there's a couple ways of dealing with this problem, but the problem is really bad, right? Which is that basically our politicians spend more time campaigning than they spend governing. And I mean, if you think about it in Illinois for a second, obviously I'm not in Congress yet, but imagine that I was in Congress. I would have been sworn in January 3rd of last year, right? January 3rd of 2025. Well, when did we start circulating petitions to get on the ballot? August. So that's 8 months after you're sworn in. You're already legally, officially doing your reelection stuff. So if you think about it, it's a 2-year term. There's 8 months that's just governing, and the other 16 months is, campaigning or the lame duck period after. So, having 3-year terms is one way of doing it. I mean, an even more radical change, but this is how it works in many, many other democracies, is not having the election day in the Constitution at all, but have some process that calls elections. Because what happens is everyone knows, when election day is, because it's the Tuesday between November 2nd and November 8th of an even numbered year. And so people can start counting back from that and running whenever they want to, gearing up for that date. But if instead the election just gets called one day and then it happens 6 weeks later, that really shortens the campaign period. Anyway, there's a few different strategies. There's no way of addressing it that wouldn't involve a constitutional change. But I do think it's a real problem that we spend so much time campaigning and so little time governing. So what does that do? That means the output is worse because there's less time spent on the output. There's more time spent on the other stuff. And then that drives up cynicism because people look around and they're like, all these guys do is apply for the job. They're too busy applying for the job to do the job. And when people feel that way, who does that cynicism benefit? It benefits the party that doesn't believe in government solving problems. It benefits Republicans.
Yes, it does.
But I think it's a real problem.
Yeah. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with Mayor Daniel Biss of the great city of Evanston, Illinois, sitting north of Chicago, who's also running for Congress, the Congressional District, 9th District in Illinois. Mayor Biss, again, I appreciate you being with us this morning, and I want this is a question that I don't know if you get this one a lot, but let's work through this one. One of the things that
I bet whatever it is, I get it more often than should we have 3-year terms in Congress. So I'm ready.
Good. All right. Well, then let's dive into the deep into the pool together. One of the things that comes up a lot, and this is that Dems eat, go after Dems too often, meaning that we fight at each other, we go at each other, we tear each other down, yada yada yada. You know the statement, you've seen it, and then but the real enemy, if you will, or the real opposition, isn't our own party. We got a lot to clean up. I'm the first to say that, or at least I try to be. But our real fight should be against the true opposition, which is the GOP at large, both the elected officials and, frankly, on all levels, and candidly, a lot of the voters. So how do you look at that? If that's a reality, how do you look at that and say, yeah, we've got to do a different job? I won't say better, but a different job of not, going after ourselves to the point where we deplete ourselves so much and not get things done against the opposition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I do want to just respectfully disagree. I think that the voters on the other side are, I disagree with them very strongly, but I think they're the ones being manipulated here, and I think it's really the leaders and the billionaires and the politicians and the think tanks that are really driving this nightmare on the far right in the MAGA movement. And I don't really put it on the voters so much as the people in charge. But I think we have to be able to hold two things in our heads, and I frankly don't know why it's that hard. One is we need a big tent. We are up against an absolute nightmare. The way that the MAGA movement is coming for everything that we hold dear means we got to win. We got to win. And to win, we got to put together the biggest possible coalition. And I really push back on both sides, right? When moderates and centrists say, I don't know if I'm going to support the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, because he's too far left for me, or I don't like his foreign policy position. It's like, what are you doing? We're trying to build the biggest possible tent here, and this is somebody who has electrified young people who, frankly, were kind of not so sure they were into the Democratic Party in many cases. This is what we need. And by the same token, I don't agree with Joe Manchin about a lot of things, but when you have someone like that running and winning in a place like West Virginia, we should be celebrating that, not driving him out of the party. So part of it is we need a big tent in order to have the biggest possible, most powerful possible, most efficacious possible coalition to crush the MAGA movement and save our country. And at the same time, we need the best possible party. I do think I'm one of those people who thinks that Joe Biden made a catastrophic decision to run for re-election, and one of the consequences is we didn't get to have a Democratic primary for president where we had a big old conversation as a party of what direction should we go, how should we tell the story, what should we prioritize, and I think if we'd had that, we would have been better positioned, perhaps with Kamala Harris as the nominee, to win that general election in 2024, and now look where we are as a result. So I don't think we should paper over disagreements. I don't think we should be scared of having disagreements, but they should be had from a standpoint of we are trying to strengthen and grow this team because this team has got to win if this country's going to survive.
I agree that the last part of what you just said in terms of we've got to win if we're going to survive, because we're not winning right now. There's no question about that. I mean, let me clean that up. We've had wins with some of the special elections recently, and we've got to continue that momentum. But on a big scale, we didn't win the big prize, which then affects a lot of the other prizes. We all know that. And one of the things that I feel sometimes happens is we've allowed too much of the Republican MAGA dialogue to fall in and seep into what our conversations need to be. We can't allow their messaging to be part of our message, no matter whoever they are. A good example is this most recent situation with Venezuela. I mean, there's people that are now starting to try to justify on the left that it was an okay thing to do because of how bad Maduro is. No, we invaded the country and we kidnapped their president. There's no justification for that. So we can, as Democrats, allow Republican talking points to be part of our talking points, which then leads people to be like, well, what are the Democrats really standing for? Do you know what I'm saying?
I couldn't agree more. I think this Venezuela thing is a really important example. Like, just tell the truth, right? Just tell the truth. If you're going to have the kind of military the U.S. has, you need to have rules about how it gets used. You can't just have a madman president break the rules and then the opposition party looks the other way. That's madness.
Yeah.
It's madness. Just tell the truth. And the truth is really simple. The president can't just invade another country and take the leader just because he stinks, which he does. Just because he stole an election, which he did. Just because we would like to see something better happen for the Venezuelan people, which we would. There are processes you have to go through, and the reason that matters is because if you have one person who can just at the push of a button start a war, effectuate an invasion for no clear reason, without authorization, because of financial interest, because he wants the oil, because of some corporate overlord, the consequences for safety in our country and across the world are devastating. And the consequences for our relationships with other countries and our ability to forge trusted alliances are devastating. You can't do this. And this is a clear situation where Democrats need to just stand strong and tell the truth. Just tell the truth and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen with this current president. It's not going to happen with this administration. They have proven themselves to not tell the truth, and they're not going to be.
Never.
So I don't think at this point we should have an expectation that they're going to tell the truth. I think we have to have we have to have the commitment that people are going to fight to win, like you said a moment ago. And whether it's because of the fact that we kick some people out that aren't fighting, or because we recruit other people in that are going to fight. That's what's got to be the case at this moment. Last thing I'm going to ask you, I know we got to have you back so we can talk more. I want to dig more into, some of the things that we could have done better and how and your observation. But let me ask you this. If you are elected to this seat in the 9th District, what's going to be kind of at the top of your list of things to do once you get to Washington?
Well, listen, on day one, we've got to stop the nightmare. I mean, I'm going to be sworn into Congress still more than 2 years before the end of this Donald Trump term. And again, I'd better be sworn in as part of a Democratic majority so that we have the ability to stop legislation and, in fact, pass some legislation of our own and do real oversight, hold these guys accountable. And so I just want to start there. I don't want to pretend that there's any priority higher than that while Donald Trump is the president. Moving forward, I talked earlier about economic security for working families, cost of housing and child care and health care. These are critical issues for me, as is climate and as is taking on the corruption. By the way, I mentioned the corruption because all these other problems that we're having, they happen because our government is stuck and broken because of the corruption, and we've got to tackle that in a serious way.
Without a doubt. Mayor Daniel Biss, also a candidate for the Illinois congressional seat in District 9, running campaigning and out there in 2026 saying this is our year. Hopefully you are right. I know that I'm going to do my part and you're doing yours to push this message and this narrative forward. So keep fighting hard. We will have you back, Mayor Biss, to talk more in the future, but thank you for hanging out with us this morning.
Thanks so much. It's great talking with you, and thanks for having me on.
All right. Have a good day. Bye now. Let's go to a quick break. Almost said Daniel. Let's go to a quick break. Devin, 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
WCPT Replay.
Joining us now is the brand new executive director of the Gender Cool Project, Chase Glenn.
I'm a trans man who grew up in a small conservative town in a pretty religious family, and this was back in the 70s and 80s when we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, necessarily a whole lot of support even for trans folks, and where I grew up, I didn't think I knew anyone who was trans, didn't hear any stories about trans folks. And so my upbringing really just, as I was able to discover who I was, just set me up for sort of understanding the importance of the support and the stories that organizations like Gender Cool tell.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Still struggling with gas, bloat, constipation, nausea, or diarrhea? Have you tried eliminating foods but felt no change? It's time to call the tummy whisperer, Renee Barish, at Digestive Health Solutions. Renee uses targeted testing to reveal exactly what's happening in your gut. Gut bacteria plays a key role in all your body functions, from cardiovascular regulation to brain function. When the gut is imbalanced, you may experience symptoms that extend beyond the gut, such as anxiety, skin issues, poor sleep, or increased risk for disease. Digestive Health Solution uses advanced testing to identify harmful microbes and evaluate the overall balance of the gut ecosystem. Get insights into your health, digestion, and how your microbiome affects all aspects of your body. Stop suffering. Call Renee now at 847-207-2034 or visit thetummywhisperer.com. That number is 847-207-2034. Let's get you feeling better. The Tummy Whisperer.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. A few spotty rain showers early today, otherwise cloudy skies with a high in the mid-40s. We'll have winds out of the south at 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 15. For tonight, mostly cloudy, a low near 33. By Wednesday, skies become mostly sunny, high 45 degrees. Then Thursday, a chance for some rain showers with cloudy skies, a high around 52. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 41.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
Hey, guys, welcome back to the show. Mayor Biss said a couple things that get you guys a little lit up. One, tell the truth. Telling the truth is critically important. I can't expect the administration to tell the truth, but we as Democrats have to tell the truth. And we have to tell the truth as it relates to what our policies are going to be, how we're going to fight, who we're going to fight for, why we're going to fight for them, and the list goes on. So I definitely don't want you guys to think that I missed that. We have to be ones to tell the truth to the American people, and at all levels, on a local level. Mayor Johnson's got to tell the truth. On a state level, the governor and the administration and statewide, state representatives and the legislature's got to tell the truth about who they're really fighting for. And of course, on a federal level, we've got to do the same thing. And we have to tell the truth to ourselves. But again, listen, I'm hell bent on this. We have got to stop cutting our own, legs out from under us. That the Republicans eat that stuff up, guys. I'm telling you, they do. I've sat quietly in rooms and listened to them talk, and they love it when Democrats do that. So telling the truth is one thing, but going after each other is another thing. And I don't agree that that's a path forward. And if you're gonna do it, it has to be done behind closed doors. You don't out your team on the playing field. Now, they do something completely just stupid in a play. Yeah, you're going to get after them, but you don't out the problems of the team. That's different. You make a bad play or a bad decision, you get after your teammate. But you don't out internal problems during the game. That is a course that is a bad one for us to take. I believe that. Someone that's had a few things to say about that way of running an organization and being a big part of success is our next guest, who's been with us before. She is one of the youngest national elected officials in the country. She is the current chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, and I'm talking about none other than our good friend Anderson Clayton from the great state of North Carolina. Good morning, Anderson, and welcome back to Choose Views on WCPT, but also on WARR down in North Carolina. How are you?
Hey, hello, good morning. It's nice to hear y'all. And Richard, thanks for having us back on here. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Anderson. You've been super busy as always. And when we had you back on in December, there were so many things that you were, I guess you could say, cleaning up, but also excited about as we get into 2026. So let's dive in. Let's talk about some of the races that are taking place. I know that in the state of North Carolina, as it stands right now, you've got some big state races. We talked to Rodney Pierce. We've got Pastor James Gaillard, who's been on the show, and others that are on a state level. But let's talk about some of the important state legislative races, and then let's look at some of the national races in terms of Congress and the Senate when it comes to what we got to get done there. So take it away. What's happening in the state that you're leaning into?
Well, the thing that we were talking about in December when I was on here was filing deadlines in North Carolina. So for everybody who may not know, North Carolina, to be on the ballot for the 2026 election, you had to file by December the 19th. And so we were trying to make sure that every state legislative seat in North Carolina was filled, because even though we've got really, really gerrymandered maps in the state that are hand-drawn right by Republicans to try to keep and suppress voters from actually using their franchise, what we had was 170 people sign up to run for legislative offices this year, out of 170 races. So we're competing in every state legislative seat across the state and every congressional seat. And we're excited because our congressional races, even though Republicans also earlier last year gerrymandered those as well, even more than they already had beforehand, we've got phenomenal candidates who really represent those districts running for those seats. And so looking at people in NC 11 right now, which is far western North Carolina, so looking at everything from Asheville over to Macon or to Cherokee County, basically anything that the Tennessee border touches in that sense. And then also looking at NCO1 still, where you're sitting out there with Rodney Pierce's district and Warren and Halifax and Northampton, and looking at those counties too right now for the aspect of that Don Davis's district is still really competitive to us, even though they took his district from being a R+3 to an R+11 this year. But Don is a good candidate, and we know that he's going to put up one hell of a fight out there for us.
Here in Illinois, we've got some big races. Obviously, Dick Durbin's not running again, so they've got that Senate race and for U.S. Senate. And then we've got, I just had on Mayor Daniel Biss, who's the mayor of the city of Evanston, a suburb north of Chicago. He's running for Jan Schakowsky's seat in the 9th Congressional District. And then yesterday I had on Kat Bagazale, who was running for that seat as well. So my point of all this is that we've got a deep bench in a lot of parts of the country. What is your take on our bench with regard to where we've got people running, not just in North Carolina, but throughout other states in the country?
No, I mean, I think we have some incredible, and I think that it's different just when you say, like, we have a bench, right? You've got, of course, you could have people at any level ready to run for office. I think it is the caliber of candidates that we have ready to run for office. And a lot of young people, I think, stepped up, especially after we saw a big change in the party, the desire for more youthful representation. But we also saw a lot of young people who have, to your point about Kat Abagazale, or even the other folks that I think that we've seen step up and run this year, even looking at someone like Deja Fox, who had an incredible run. Even though she wasn't successful in that primary, she still put her hat in the ring and made sure that young people had a voice in that primary. I just think that there are some really incredible caliber candidates that we have across the state and across the country. And in North Carolina, that looks like mayoral races and state legislative seats right now, and using those as our bench to be able to run congressional candidates in the future. And so we just had the first ever Hispanic elected official get on the Charlotte City Council, which is in Mecklenburg County, our second largest county in the state in North Carolina. And we had 29 young Dems win municipal elections last November. And so for me, I got 100 counties in the state. I need a young Dem in every single one of them that's ready to move up and run for another office after they get done in the one that they're in. And I think that that's what we're seeing across the country right now, too, is a big mobilization effort to make sure the bottom of the ballot is also filled just as much as the top is.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Mecklenburg. A funny story I'll tell you, Anderson. My wife and I visited family that live in Charlotte for Christmas, and folks came from a couple different parts of the country to kind of gather there for Christmas. And so one day, my wife and I took the train downtown the day after Christmas, in fact. And we were walking around, and my wife saw the name Mecklenburg, and she said, "Why do I know that name?" And I was like, "Well, it's probably for one of two reasons." I said, "It could be the football player that used to play professional football, Carl Mecklenburg." I said, "But sweetie, I doubt that's the reason why." She said, "Well, what's the other one?" I said, Mecklenburg County is the county that is, that makes up Charlotte and the greater metropolitan area. And I said, during every national political election, she cut me off. She said, "Oh, that's right. It's like the county that everybody's talking about in North Carolina in terms of its population and its impact on the state election, but also on the federal election." So it was a funny story because she's like, "Oh yeah, that's where it was. I remember that now."
No, I love that y'all are visiting family in the Queen City, but I do think that it is a definite turning factor for the state. And Mecklenburg is a really interesting. It's sort of a hard nut to crack sometimes too, because you have a very transitory population there because it's a business center, and so you've got people moving in, our business capital, right, second largest in the entire country, entire world, and it's like you have people moving in, moving out very, very quickly, but you also have people that are like moving from apartments because the rent's going up in one place and it's cheaper in another. And so there's a large spectrum in Mecklenburg. And one thing that we've really tried to do, Wesley Harris is the new county party chair out there, and he has done an incredible job, I think, of trying to make sure that we're organizing every part of Mecklenburg, that we're not just in Valentine, we are also in East Charlotte, and we need to be in all areas, I think, right now of that county.
Because the county is massive. We did a drive around.
The county's the size of most states. Like if you're in Rhode Island, no offense, but that's Mecklenburg County for us. It's like the Rhode Island or Delaware. I mean, New Hampshire too, in some sense. But Mecklenburg is a really big county, and it is the only county that we have had a decline, right, from statewide averages in voter turnout too. And so for us, it is making sure that we are again aggressively turning out our base in those areas, because I think that that's what the party's not done a good job at, is that we've assumed that Democrats are just going to come out to the polls. And in North Carolina, we have a persuasion problem, but we also have a turnout problem. And so for us, it is hyping up that turnout more and more and more so we can get Roy Cooper elected to the U.S. Senate this year.
So I'm going to put an asterisk on that for a second and come back to something you just said. I don't want to miss this because I know a lot of people want to get your take on it. And by the way, you're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. So we're talking with the head of the Democratic chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, Anderson Clayton. Anderson, in terms of folks not coming out and folks not getting involved or being involved, that's not just something that Mecklenburg County or the state of North Carolina has as an issue, irrespective of party, but let's just talk about our party. What do you think? And I was talking to Mayor Biss about this earlier, since he's running for Congress, but what do you think is the reason for voter apathy? We can't hide from this. Someone said we got to tell the truth to our Democratic Party. But in that space, Anderson, why do you think that we have this apathy in the Democratic Party when it comes to people being plugged in and people coming out to vote in any election? Talk about that as you can.
I mean, two different things go into that. Well, a lot of factors go into that, I think. But the number one is that, people don't know how to get involved. And I think that a lot of people look at a Democratic Party or a Republican Party nationally or even around them, and they think that is not the person that's next to me. It's the party is up there, the party is not down here, and it's not around me. And the other part of that is that people don't believe that politics is actually there to help them right now. And I think that what we're seeing right now coming out of Washington, D.C., with politicians trying to strip away every single bit of health care access or every bit of help that they have ever helped or given to the American people. And that's the rug is being pulled out from under folks literally right now in some sense of their life and their stability with it. I think that people don't believe that politics actually works. And I think that they think that only corrupt people go into politics in order to do it. And I think that we have to. And that's why I think candidate quality and candidate recruitment is the most important place that a party can play a role in, because we need to make sure that the candidates that we are recruiting are folks that represent the districts that they're from, and that they are people who understand and who those folks in that district can relate to and know and trust, because so much of what we're seeing right now is an erosion of trust in politics too. And I think that goes back to everything that I just laid out too in that, but it really does, and it really is what I'm seeing. I don't think that people don't care. I think that people want a way to get involved and they don't know how. I think they're working 2 jobs and it's impossible to volunteer if you are, and the barriers to that. I was talking with a couple young Dems this week. And, they just got involved with the Young Democrats of North Carolina. If I have any young Dems or if I've got any parents listening to this right now, I've got youth auxiliaries in the state, my teen Dems, my college Dems, and my young Dems. And all you've got to do is go on their websites and sign up to apply to be one, and tell them that you're interested in what county that you're in, and they will contact you. But I do think it's helping people understand just what I did right there of how do you get involved with young Dems. And a lot of those young Dems were saying, Anderson, we need more ways for young people who don't have a lot of time to be involved with an organization. And I think that is a hard crux sometimes for us to fix, but it goes not just to young people, it's just to working people in general. And that's what I think we see an absence of in politics is working folks.
That's one of the things that Mayor Biss was saying too, or at least alluding to, that because of people who are so busy that they and they're barely getting by. I mean, the deception is you have a person that's working, you have a husband and wife or a family, couple that's working. Married couple that's working, and they've got 2 incomes and they're taking care of children. They've got all those things happening. And but they see their 401k is growing, but their income is not growing. And so there's this sort of, that's moving along because 401ks are, broadly speaking, up right now if you work for a company that offers one and your retirement plan is up. But,
well, I'm going to tell you what, too, Richard, they were up to in Joe Biden's administration, right? But nobody felt that necessarily either, or else we would have a different president right now.
No, but that's my point. That's where we're both headed. So, but the fact that people are working these 2, multiple jobs and things, but not getting ahead in terms of their day-to-day living, that's causing an economic issue, but it's also preventing them, to your point, of being able to find the time to get involved. And they could be in their 50s or they could be, in their early 30s in terms of the age band. So I want to, the mobilization is a word that came to my mind when you were talking about people not knowing how to get involved and where to go and what to do. And that's why I wanted to ask you, because I think that your voice as a, quote, chronologically younger voice, you do have kind of your thumb on the pulse. And I think that that's one of the things the Democratic Party at large has to listen to is people are saying that they want to be involved. They just don't know where to go and how to get involved. And so hopefully we can continue to push that narrative and get people involved by making them more aware of what the opportunities are. Because I think a lot of people see the opportunities are just sort of boring and there's really nothing that's going to change. And so why should I, I'm just going to turn it off and tune it out. So that's
exactly.
I'm seeing that more.
And I think there are.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think there are a lot of ways to do that too. And for us, it's about having the capacity from a staff perspective to be able to go out there and help teach people, here's how you get involved with politics. And I think the exciting thing for anybody right now who's asking myself, well, should I volunteer? Should I get involved? You're helping somebody understand what their own power is, and you're also getting to understand what yours is. And for a long time, people wanted you to think you didn't have power. And I think that the best thing that we could do for people around us and to ourselves is say, yes, I have agency and I have power in a world that tells me I don't right now. And to your point, 60% of Americans, right, own stocks technically. If you have a 401k or if you've got a retirement plan of any type, you do. But they're not, right, because that money, most of people in this country right now are not retired. They're actually trying to work through and get there, right? It's like they're not experiencing that right now. And I think that we have such an opportunity while Republicans are trying to launch us into a third world war over here to be able to say they're not focused on the issues right now that are impacting your everyday life.
Nope. And they ran that. This is the other thing, too. I appreciate you saying it, that Republicans, it wasn't just Donald Trump that ran on the things that he ran on. It was the entire GOP on a national level and on a state level. Because you look at some of the state legislatures that are Republican-led, and they ran on the same garbage. And so Americans are being hurt not by Democrats who don't have the numbers on a federal level. We know that. But by Republicans on a federal and a state level. Where Democrats hold the state legislature, things are getting done in those states. Where the state is led by a Democratic governor, lieutenant governor, AG, secretary of state, those things are getting done because what we ran on, we're working to get done. By contrast, Republicans have completely, they haven't even gone in the other direction. They were already headed there. It's just that people followed them because there was so much hate on the others in this conversation. Let's talk about somebody that's running in your state, Roy Cooper. Let's talk about this U.S. Senate seat. Ted Budd and Tom Tillis are the senators in North Carolina. Both are Republican. We have a governor in North Carolina, Josh Stein, who's a Democrat. What's the reality here with regard to the former governor, Roy Cooper, in the Senate seat?
I mean, Governor Cooper, right now, I think Republicans are running scared. And I can say that because I've not seen Michael Whatley, who is his Republican opponent right now in the state whatsoever. But I do think that Governor Cooper, with the legacy of service that he has, people in North Carolina know who he is. And they know that every time when Roy Cooper's in office, they feel safer and they feel like their health care is better protected. And I think that for 26, those are the two most important issues that we're seeing across the state right now, public safety and also making sure that health care access is afforded to everybody. And that's something where I think that translates from both eastern to the western side of the state.
Statewide elections, when you've been in a statewide office, you tend to have a little bit of the, I guess you could say, the power of the incumbency of people knowing who you are. And Roy Cooper is a definite example of that because of having been governor. And not just governor, but to your point about qualified. He was very successful on a statewide basis for the state of North Carolina. And then the region, frankly, was in good hands with him being in that leadership role, as it is now with Josh Stein. So, I would agree with you. His recognition is going to be one of his pluses, but it's also because he got things done in that role. So I'm excited. And fingers crossed.
People know him for who he is, right? And that is a public servant. And to the point that I made to you earlier, I think a lot of people look at politics right now and they're like, I don't want another politician. I want, like, it used to be called public service for a reason. It was not called, the aspect of going and running for office. It was, you're going to be a public servant for the people in your communities. And I wish we would reframe it a little bit more to when we talk to people about what is this job supposed to be. I'm like, it's not flashy. It's actually, you're doing grunt work for everybody in your district to make sure that they've got what they need. It is making sure that no one is homeless, no one is hungry, no one needs help in your community. And when you've done that, you've done your job. And I think that that's what we saw from Roy Cooper, who was like, my main priority is going to be making sure that people have health care. He spent a decade. He was eight years as Attorney General before he spent 8 years as governor. And his 8 years as governor was meant to make sure that we had Medicaid expansion in North Carolina, because North Carolina was one of the last states in the union, right, to be able to say that we were going to expand Medicaid, even though a good chunk of our population, 3 million people out of the 11 million in the state right now, rely on it and need it. And I think that we had a huge opportunity when he was able to expand Medicaid access for over 600,000 people in North Carolina to get health insurance for the first time. And when Roy Cooper talks about that, he tells the same story, honestly, because it is I think the best one that he's ever heard or ever gotten, in my opinion. But he talks about this woman, Penny, and when Roy Cooper got to give Penny her health insurance card. And I won't ever forget it, because when he tells it, he gets this, like, this glint in his eye that talks about, or that you can just see he is very emotional about it, because it goes back to he's from Nash County, right, out there in eastern North Carolina, a place that I think is forgotten about quite a lot. And those are things that people forget, is that if you're in a rural part of the state or the country right now, you're traveling almost 2 to 3 hours to find a specialist, to get a doctor. And when you come from those places and you understand that, like, that's the difference between life or death for anybody that you care about. I think it just means something different. And for me, that's somebody that I want in the U.S. Senate, somebody that has those experiences, right, and that can actually relate to the people that I think are hurting right now from what's happening in D.C.
hurting and also aspirational about what can be better. And I think that that's one of the things that that we have to take advantage of as a Democratic Party on the state level and on a national level. People are hurting. Mayor Biss spoke about this a little bit. But the aspirational part of this, the upside, the opportunity for us is to say we recognize that, and let's put together the plans and the coalition that's going to get it done and not get caught up in this infighting that so oftentimes derails us from succeeding when we have, it's that old phrase of what is snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. I think that's what it is. Let's not do that this time. Anderson, one of the things I want to real quickly, someone sent this to me, and I just want to kind of throw this out because you were talking about getting involved. One of our listeners said the Democratic Party should send a list of things that they can volunteer for, meaning voters. All emails go out asking for donations. Do both because time is money. Volunteer and give money. One of our listeners just sent that to me while you were talking. I wanted to read that to you real quick as we wrap up. What are your thoughts about that?
I think if you get, I would love the listeners' feedback on emails that you get from the North Carolina Democratic Party, because you will find a lot of my emails ask you to volunteer, and not as many of them, I think, ask you to give money. But and because we've tried that, I recognize that. I think people are tired of getting fundraising emails. People give money to something when they actually see it working, and when they see the person on the ground, or when they see the organization out there actually doing something. That's what makes them want to give. I think that's why you have, honestly, I think the NAACP, the reason why nationally it had been such a formidable organization for so long was the fact that people saw the NAACP filing court cases on their behalf. They saw them and they're like, well, that's the place you go give money to then to help civil rights causes. That, and I think that we need to sort of be and become an entity again that really gives people hope and faith in that. And so I think it's a great idea, and I think that we all have to be doing it more. I do think, though, that unfortunately right now, until we have campaign finance reform, elections cost money, and that's just to people listening to this, that if you're annoyed by it, delete the email and still keep supporting Democrats, hopefully.
Yeah, I had another. I won't do this to you now because we're running short on time. We'll give you back and talk about that. But I did get a nice, an interesting email from one of the listeners about that very thing in terms of campaign finance. Her name is Anderson Clayton, y'all. She is the head of the Democratic. She's a chair of the Democratic Party in North Carolina, and I am so honored to have you on the show again. As I said this to you before, Anderson, we got to have you back. Your voice in the state's important. We know that, but your voice nationally is even more important in many minds because you are that voice that people keep asking for. Where are those young voices, that young energy, that spirit, and all that? And you bring that to the table. So thank you for hanging out with us this morning. I really appreciate it. Happy New Year. Let's do this again in a few weeks when you're ready and you got some time so we can keep pushing your narrative there in the great state of North Carolina.
Thank you so much. And also, my email's on the NCDP website. Anybody listening to this that wants to volunteer or who's like, how do I get involved? Email me. Let's talk.
Got it. Anderson Clayton, have a great day and a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Bye now. All right, guys, there it is. Mayor Daniel Biss running for the 9th Congressional District here in Illinois, and Anderson Clayton, who is the current chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party. Two leading voices right now in our fight to take back our democracy from these craven fools that have captured it. Stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. And remember, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hellacious one. I'm up on the transmitter trying to power us up so you can hear us on 820. But if you can't hear us on the radio, you can also hear us on heartlandsignal.com, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn Radio app, and SoundCloud.com/WCPT 820. It's the Sports Cubicle.